My name is Ava Mercer. I'm 36, and I own every share of the commercial laundry company I built. At 9:17 on a Monday morning, my accountant asked why my younger sister had placed a $62,000 equipment order as a half-owner. I told him she wasn't an owner, and Caleb Dunn turned his monitor toward me and opened one file. The title was plain: Ownership and Authority, Current. Inside were the records my parents had been pretending did not exist. Caleb tapped the screen and said, "Ava, your mother has been telling vendors that Betrayal owns half the company." By Thursday, my parents would sit across from me at my bank. They would bring Betrayal, a glossy sales deck, and a story about what our family deserved. I would bring Caleb and that one file. Before the meeting ended, my mother would learn that a family loan is not a deed to someone else's life. Tell me this before I go back to the beginning. Does helping someone once give you a permanent claim on everything they build afterward? My parents had already answered yes, and that answer came from the home where I grew up outside Charlotte, a brick ranch with a sloped driveway and a pear tree that never produced good pears. My father, Grant, managed parts inventory for a truck dealer, while my mother, Linda, kept the house, the calendar, and every family opinion in the same firm grip. Betrayal was 5 years younger than me, and she was bright, funny, and fearless in ways I never was. She could miss curfew and turn the lecture into a story everyone laughed at. Betrayal could come home late and make everyone laugh, while I could be 10 minutes late and spend the night writing an apology. Mom called that knowing what each child needed. Betrayal needed encouragement. I needed standards. That was the family math, and I learned it early. When Betrayal wanted dance lessons, Mom found the money. When I wanted to join a weekend engineering camp, Dad asked whether it would help me get a job. I filled out the scholarship form, went anyway, and became the dependable one. I packed lunches, remembered birthdays, and drove Betrayal to practice once I had a license. Adults praised me for being mature, but what they meant was that I caused very little inconvenience. At 18, I left for a state college 2 hours away. I studied operations management and worked the evening desk at a residence hall. My parents paid for my books during the first year. I paid for everything else with grants, work, and a stubborn dislike of asking twice. After college, I took a route coordinator job with a company that serviced hotel laundry rooms. I learned which machines failed first, which managers paid on time, and which service promises were only sales language. I liked the work. It was concrete. A washer stopped, a hotel lost rooms, and a technician arrived, the schedule moved again. Nobody could talk a broken bearing into being useful. By 25, I knew there was a gap in the market. Big hotel chains had national contracts, while small hotels and apartment communities got slow service and confusing bills. I thought a local company could do better, and I wrote a business plan at my kitchen table. It had modest numbers, ugly charts, and no fantasy ending. I needed a van, tools, insurance, and enough cash to survive the first season. The bank approved part of what I asked for. I was still $30,000 short. I could have waited another year, but 2 hotel managers had already offered trial contracts. The opening was real. I went to my parents with the plan. Dad read every page, Mom skipped to the revenue forecast. Betrayal sat at the table scrolling through her phone. "We can help," Dad said, "but this needs to stay in the family." I asked what that meant. Mom said they would put in the $30,000 and we would work out ownership later. Her tone made later sound like a favor I would owe forever. I said no. My voice shook, but the word did not. I offered a written loan with interest and a fixed payment schedule. Dad looked relieved, Mom looked offended. "You don't trust us?" she asked. "I trust clear terms," I said. That was the first time I saw how much my mother disliked a boundary she could not rename. She agreed because Dad wanted the interest, and because she believed paper would not matter between family. We signed a simple promissory note, and the money went into the business account. My parents did not receive shares, voting rights, or a management role. That was written in ordinary language. Mercer Laundry Systems started with one used van and a rented bay behind an auto glass shop, while I took calls, scheduled repairs, and cleaned my own office every Friday. My first technician was 58 and knew more about motors than I did, while Mom handled invoices from my kitchen twice a week during those first 9 months. I paid her a small hourly rate, although she often told people she was volunteering. Her help mattered. I have never denied that. She caught duplicate bills and chased too late accounts until they paid. She also introduced herself as my business partner, and the first time I corrected her, she laughed. "I'm the silent partner," she told the hotel manager. I smiled because the manager was standing there, but later I asked her not to say it again. Mom said I was being touchy. That was my first mistake. I treated her claim like a social irritation, not a warning. I believed the signed note made the truth too obvious to challenge. Within a year, I hired a bookkeeper. Mom stopped doing invoices. I changed the main passwords, moved the records into a new system, and assumed the old access was gone. I did not audit every vendor profile. One supplier still listed Linda Mercer as a family office contact. One purchasing card still had her phone number attached for verification. Those details sat dormant for years, and the company grew slowly. I paid my parents every month, even when I skipped my own paycheck. Dad kept a paper ledger in a desk drawer, and Mom kept a different kind of ledger in her head. At family dinners, she would say, "Remember who believed in you first." I always answered, "I do." What I meant was gratitude, and what she heard was ownership. By the third year, we had 6 employees and 3 vans. I still answered emergency calls, but I no longer carried every wrench myself. I learned how to hire people who knew what I did not. Caleb joined us as an outside accountant during that year. He had a dry voice, square glasses, and no patience for vague categories. The first time he reviewed our books, he asked why family help appeared in 3 different places. I showed him the promissory note. He rebuilt the payment schedule and moved every dollar into the right account. Then he asked whether my parents owned anything. "No," I said. "Good," he replied. "Then the records should make that boring." At home, the story stayed less tidy. Betrayal moved from idea to idea. She was good with people, but not with plans that became repetitive. Before long, she had sold candles, managed a boutique, and tried real estate classes. I hired Betrayal once. She was 24 and between jobs. I gave her a temporary role calling overdue customers and updating contact lists. On the 3rd Monday, she missed a scheduled call with our largest apartment client. I covered it, and afterward I told her the role needed a fixed start time. She stared at me as if I had insulted her. "I'm your sister, not one of your employees." "You are both while you're here," I said. She quit at lunch, and Mom called before I had finished the incident note. "You embarrassed her," she said. "I asked her to be on time." "You always make everything a rule." I almost apologized. That was my old reflex. Instead, I said the client had a rule too. They expected us to answer when we promised, and that same standard helped the company reach its 5th year with 14 employees. We won a service contract covering 9 small hotels across the region. I bought a second-hand warehouse on the edge of Charlotte. Dad helped assemble shelves during the move, and I gave my parents a temporary visitor code that should have expired. That year, I made the final payment on my parents' loan. The total included every dollar of principal and the agreed interest. I invited them to dinner and handed Dad a copy of the payoff letter. He shook my hand. "You did what you said." Mom read the letter twice. "So that's it? That's the loan," I said, "paid in full." She folded the page with a sharp crease. "We didn't do it just for interest." "I know, I'm grateful." The payoff letter went into our permanent records, and Caleb also requested a signed acknowledgement from Dad. Dad sent it back the next morning. Mom never signed anything. She did not need to. The note named both lenders, and the bank records showed the final transfer. Legally, the loan was over. When we opened a second service hub, she told her church friends that her investment had paid off. When a local business journal mentioned me, she mailed copies to relatives with our company written on the envelope. I corrected her in private, and she said I cared more about credit than family. Dad rarely joined those arguments. He would rub the bridge of his nose and say we should both let it go. In our family, peace meant that the person with the clearest boundary had to blur it. I kept attending dinners. I brought gifts. I helped Dad compare retirement plans and fixed Mom's laptop more times than I can count. She also believed support should arrive before effort. When her boutique closed, she blamed the landlord. When her online shop lost money, she blamed the shipping company. The first direct request came when I was 32. Brielle wanted to start a home goods brand. Mom asked me to give her 10% of Mercer Laundry Systems so she could use the dividends. I thought I had misheard. For a business that has nothing to do with mine. She needs stable income while she builds, Mom said. So did I. That's different. You were always good with pressure. There it was, my competence had become the reason I deserved less help. Brielle's instability had become the reason she deserved part of what I built. I refused. Mom said I was punishing my sister for having a different personality. Dad said 10% would not change my life. It would change ownership, I said. Brielle was not in the room, but later she told me she had never asked for shares. I believed her, although I noticed that she did not tell Mom to stop asking. A year later, Brielle launched a small linen styling service for bed and breakfast owners. She chose fabric colors and arranged custom orders through wholesalers. She was genuinely good at the visual work. I sent her 2 clients who needed help with guest room updates. She thanked me and delivered good results. For a while, I thought we had found a safe way to support each other. Then she began telling customers that her service was the design side of my company. I asked her to correct that. It makes people trust me, she said. They are trusting my company, not yours. You introduced us. That is not the same thing. She rolled her eyes, but she changed the wording on her website. Mom called the correction humiliating. I started to understand that facts did not settle anything in my family. A fact only became another obstacle they expected me to remove. By the time I was 36, Mercer Laundry Systems had 28 employees. We serviced hotels, apartment communities, and 2 college residence halls. We were not famous. We were stable. Stability was the part I valued most, and payroll cleared on time. Technicians had health coverage and paid training. Clients knew who would answer after hours. I knew the names of my employees, children, and the sounds of our oldest vans. The company was not a trophy. It was a web of promises. That is why Caleb's question on that Monday morning felt less like an insult and more like a fire alarm. Caleb had arrived early for our monthly review. I came in with coffee and a list of routine questions. He did not touch the coffee. Did you approve new finishing equipment? He asked. No. Did you add Brielle as an owner? I set the cup down. No. He opened the invoice request. Tidewell Equipment had prepared an order for 2 commercial embroidery machines, a fabric cutter, and installation. The total was $62,000. The order named Mercer Laundry Systems as the buyer. It named Brielle Mercer as co-owner and project lead, and my mother appeared as the family investment contact. Nothing had shipped, and Tidewell had placed the machines on hold pending financing. That was the only reason the problem was still containable. Caleb opened the file he had built for our annual bank review. It included our formation record, the current ownership schedule, the old promissory note, the payoff letter, and the list of approved signers. My name appeared in every place that mattered, and Brielle's appeared nowhere. Where did Tidewell get her information? I asked. Caleb clicked into the vendor history. Someone used the old family office contact. I felt heat move up my neck. That account should be dead. It should. He did not soften the answer. I appreciated that later. The old contact traced back to my mother's first year helping with invoices. Tidewell had supplied parts to us before we moved systems. Their portal still recognized her phone number. Mom had used that forgotten doorway. She had not hacked anything. She had walked through access I had failed to close. That fact mattered. Her choice was wrong. My oversight made it possible. Caleb then showed me a second page, where a financing request had been started through Harbor State Bank. It was incomplete because the bank required the actual owner's signature. A meeting was set for Thursday morning, and I was listed as attending. I never agreed to a meeting. Linda did, Caleb said. My mother had answered for me, and I called Tidewell while Caleb listened. The account representative sounded relieved when I identified myself. "We were waiting for your final approval," he said. "Your sister said the ownership update was still being processed." "There is no ownership update." Silence. I asked him to freeze the order and send every message connected to it. He agreed. He also froze routine purchasing on our account until we confirmed who had authority. That was the first visible cost. Our technicians ordered parts through Tidewell almost every day. A false claim about ownership had now slowed the real work. I called our operations manager and told her to route urgent purchases through another supplier. I kept the explanation short. A family member had used outdated access. We were fixing it. She asked whether payroll was safe. "Yes," I said. "Completely." The question hurt more than I expected. My parents thought they were arranging a gift. My staff heard instability. Caleb printed the email chain. My mother's messages were confident and cheerful. She wrote that our family was formalizing the second generation of ownership. Betrayal wrote that she would oversee a new hospitality textiles division. She attached a logo that placed her brand beside mine. The logo used the same navy lettering as Mercer Laundry Systems. Underneath, in smaller type, it said, "A Mercer Family Company." I had never seen it. The last email came from Mom. "Ava is cautious, but she always comes around when the family needs her." I read that sentence twice. It was not a prediction. It was their plan. I called Betrayal first. She answered on the fourth ring with music playing behind her. "Hey, I was about to call you." "Why does Tidewell think you own half my company?" The music stopped, and she said Mom had explained everything. The original investment made the business a family asset, and Mom and Dad had decided to assign their half to her. "They do not have a half." "That's not what they said. Did you ask to see ownership papers?" A pause. "No, because they're our parents." I looked at the file on Caleb's screen. "And I'm the owner." Her voice changed. It lost its lightness. "Ava, please don't make this ugly. I found a $62,000 order in my company's name. It's equipment. The company will use it. My company does not sell linens." "It could." "That's the whole point." I asked whether she had told anyone she was my partner. She said, "I told people what Mom and Dad told me." "That isn't an answer." She exhaled hard. "Yes, I said I was coming in as a half owner." "How many people?" "I don't know." Betrayal. "Some vendors, a few clients, maybe people at the warehouse." The room seemed to narrow around me. "You went to my warehouse?" "Mom gave me the code." Caleb looked up, and I ended the call before anger made the next decision for me. I told Betrayal not to contact any employee, client, bank, or vendor in my company's name. I said I would put it in writing within the hour. She began to cry. Not loudly. That made it worse. "You always do this," she said. "You turn everything into a contract." "No, I turn business into business." "You know what I mean." I did. She meant I was refusing to let family pressure replace consent. After the call, I sat still for a full minute. Caleb waited. Then I asked him to show me every open access point, and we found both the old Tidewell profile and a purchasing card that had expired years ago, but still listed Mom's number for verification. We found a warehouse emergency code that had never been changed because no one remembered it existed. That was my failure. I wrote it down. Caleb asked whether I wanted to call the police. I said no. Nothing had been taken, and the order was not complete. I wanted the facts secured before anyone turned panic into a spectacle. We disabled every old contact, and the warehouse code changed before noon. Tidewell received a written notice with the current signer list. "Your parents are going to say the loan created ownership," he said. "The note says it didn't. They may not care. I know." That was the part I had spent 11 years avoiding, and my mother did not need her story to be legal. She only needed it to be loud enough that I would pay to make it stop. At 11:30, my father called. "Your mother says you froze Brielle's order." It was never Brielle's order to place. "You know what I mean?" "No, Dad, I need you to say it." He went quiet. Then he said, "We decided it was time to make things fair." I looked through the glass wall at 20 people moving through the office and warehouse. They were checking routes, loading parts, answering clients. "Fair to whom?" "To your sister." "What did you give her?" "Half of the family interest." "There is no family interest." His voice tightened. "We put $30,000 into that business. You made a loan, I repaid it. That money got you started?" "Yes, it helped me start." "So stop acting like we're strangers." I closed my eyes. The old trap was back. Gratitude on one side, surrender on the other. "I'll come by tonight," I said. "We can look at the papers together." Dad relaxed at once. He thought that meant I was coming around. I added, "Brielle can be there." "No one contacts my business before then." Mom spoke in the background, and I could not make out the words. Dad said, "Thursday's meeting is still happening." I did not schedule that meeting. "Just come tonight, Ava." He hung up. Caleb watched me set down the phone. "You're going alone?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because I want to know whether they believe this or planned it." He nodded once. "Those are different problems." They were. I still hoped I had the smaller one. My parents still lived in the brick ranch where we grew up. The pear tree was gone, but the sloped driveway still made every car look slightly crooked. I arrived at 6. Brielle's car was already there. Through the front window, I saw a stack of presentation boards leaning against the sofa. Mom opened the door before I knocked. She wore the expression she used when a family photo was running late. "We are not fighting," she said. "I came to prevent one." "That depends on your attitude." I followed her into the dining room, and Dad sat at the head of the table. Brielle had arranged fabric samples, business cards, and a thick sales deck in front of her. The top card said Brielle Mercer, co-owner and creative director. Under that was the name of my company. I picked up the card. "How many of these exist?" Brielle looked at Mom. 200, Mom said. "They were part of the launch package." "Who paid for them?" "We did." I set the card down. "Then you paid to print a title she does not have." Mom pulled out a chair. "Sit down and listen before you judge." Dad began with the loan. He spoke slowly, as if a calm pace could change the document. He said they had risked their savings when no bank would fully back me. I agreed. He said the company would not exist without them. "I might have started later," I said. "But yes, your loan mattered." Mom leaned forward. "Then you understand why we kept an interest." "No, I understand why I paid the loan." She slid a paper across the table, and it was not a legal document. It was a family chart. My name was on the left. Brielle, S, was on the right. A line divided the company into equal halves. Mom and Dad appeared above us with the words "Original Family Investors." I almost laughed. The paper looked like something made for a school project. The damage behind it was real. "This has no authority," I said. "It shows the intent," Mom replied. "Whose intent?" "Ours. You cannot intend away my ownership." Brielle touched one of the fabric samples. "Can we please talk about the actual plan?" She opened the sales deck. Her idea was to sell coordinated linen packages to small hotels. She had supplier estimates, sample rooms, and a list of prospects. She wanted my customer list, my warehouse, my credit, and my service teams. In return, her new division would share future profits with Mercer Laundry Systems. Share profits? I asked. After using everything we already built. It would be one company, she said. Whose company? Brielle looked down. Mom answered. Both of yours? I asked when they planned to tell me, and Mom's face hardened. We are telling you now. You told vendors first. We needed real numbers before bringing you a proposal. You called her a half-owner. It was easier than explaining the transition. There it was, not confusion, strategy. I turned to Dad. Did you know they were using the title? He rubbed his palms together. I knew they were preparing. That is not what I asked. Yes, he said, I knew. The room changed for me then, because Dad had always hidden behind Mom's certainty. This time, he had joined the plan before I arrived, and I asked whether they had read the promissory note. Mom said paper did not capture sacrifice. I asked whether they had seen the payoff letter. Dad said repayment did not erase history. I asked whether either of them owned one share. Mom's voice rose. You are reducing your family to paperwork. No, I am stopping you from using family to replace paperwork. Brielle pushed back from the table. I didn't know you would react like this. You knew I had never offered you ownership. Mom said you would resist at first. What did you think that meant? She stared at me. Her answer was in the silence. She thought resistance was a stage, not a decision. I took a breath and tried the reasonable path. Brielle, your concept may have value. You can apply for a business development role, and we can test the idea with a small pilot. You would have a salary, written goals, and no ownership. Her eyes widened. Apply? Yes. To my own sister? To the company? Mom made a sharp sound. That is insulting. It is a real offer. You want Brielle answering to strangers in a business our money created. She would answer to the managers who run those departments. Dad said, couldn't you make her a vice president? No, I explained why. Brielle had no experience managing technicians, contracts, payroll, or equipment financing. A title would not teach those things. She knows hospitality, Mom said. She knows styling. You always find a smaller word for what she does. I looked at my sister. I may not have given your work enough credit. That does not make you an owner. Then Mom said, do not apologize when you are still withholding what is hers. The opening closed, and I asked about Tidewell's reservation fee. Dad looked at Mom. Mom looked at Brielle. What fee? I asked again. They had paid $8,000 to hold the machines and lock the quoted price. The reservation agreement was in my parents' names. Good, I said. Then it is not a company expense. Mom's jaw tightened. It becomes one when you approve the order. I will not approve it. You have not even reviewed the projections. I do not need projections to reject unauthorized ownership. Brielle stood. So you're killing this because of a title? I'm stopping it because you used my name, my credit, and my staff before I said yes. No one took money from you. You put $62,000 in my company's name. It wasn't final, because my signature was missing. The words stayed in the room, and Mom gathered the fabric samples into a neat pile. She did that when she wanted control back. Thursday's meeting will settle this, she said. What do you think the bank will settle? They will see the original investment. The bank already has the records. Then let them explain why your parents get nothing. I stood. You got repayment with interest. You got exactly what you signed for. Dad's chair scraped the floor. We are not asking for ourselves. That does not make it yours to give. Mom pointed toward the presentation boards. Your sister finally has a serious plan. You have more than enough. Why must everything be about what you earned? I looked at her. Because you are trying to give it away. No one answered. I took one business card and one copy of the family chart. I told them I was preserving evidence of the false title. Mom accused me of threatening them. I am documenting what you already did. You sound like your accountant. That is not an insult. As I reached the front door, Brielle followed me. Ava, wait. We stood under the porch light. Her anger was gone. She looked frightened. "I told people," she said. "I know. I have a launch breakfast next week. Cancel it." "I can't." "You can." Mom invited hotel owners. Dad invited people from the bank. "How many hotel owners?" "6. "Did you use my customer list?" Brielle hesitated. My stomach dropped. "Mom had an old spreadsheet," she said. That was the first major turn. The equipment order could be frozen. A copied customer list could travel, and I asked where the spreadsheet came from. Mom had saved it during the first year she helped with invoices. The information was old, but several clients were still active. Brielle had emailed 3 of them. She had told them Mercer Laundry Systems was expanding under new family leadership. Did anyone respond? One asked for a meeting. Who? She named Riverbend Hotel Group, one of our largest clients, and I felt the porch tilt, although I was standing still. Riverbend's renewal was under review. Their contract supported 4 service jobs and a large part of our weekend route. "Forward every email to me tonight," I said. Brielle folded her arms. "Are you going to embarrass me?" "I am going to correct the record." "Same thing." "No, embarrassment is how you feel when a false claim is corrected. It is not the harm itself." Her eyes filled. "You always have a sentence ready." I wish I had not needed this one. I left before Mom could come outside, and in the car I called our operations manager to ask whether Brielle had entered the warehouse. "She came Friday," Nora said. "Linda was with her." That was 3 days before Caleb found the order, and Nora said they had arrived near closing. Mom used the emergency code and told the shift lead they were meeting me. Brielle photographed a blank display area and several machine tags. "Why didn't anyone call me?" "They said it was a surprise project. Your mother knew people's names." Nora sounded ashamed. I stopped her. "This is mine to fix," I said. No one gets punished for believing my mother had permission. I asked her to hold a staff meeting at 7 the next morning. She agreed. Then I sat in my car outside the house where I grew up and listened to my own breathing. For years, Mom had said I made everything a rule. Now 28 people needed those rules to mean something. I drove back to the office. Caleb was still there. He ate soup from the container while reviewing access logs, and I gave him the business card, the family chart, and Brielle's update about Riverbend. He stared at the chart. "This is not even convincing," he said. It did not need to convince me. It needed to convince people who assumed my parents could speak for me. He added both pages to the incident record, and then he opened the current ownership file again. "Tomorrow," I said, "we make the boring truth louder." At 7 the next morning, every employee who was not on an emergency route gathered in the warehouse. The rest joined by phone. I stood beside the parts counter. Behind me, a whiteboard listed the day's service calls, and I wanted everyone to see that the work was still moving. I told them a family member had used outdated access and falsely claimed ownership. I said the order was frozen, the bank accounts were secure, and no employee had done anything wrong. Then I said the part that mattered most. I own the company, no transfer has happened, no transfer is planned. Nora asked whether Brielle would be joining us. No. A technician near the loading door raised his hand. "She said you were moving into an advisory role." "What did you tell her?" I asked. He looked uncomfortable. "That you were here before sunrise on Thursday." A few people laughed and the tension eased, but only a little. I thanked him. Then I gave one rule. Any ownership claim, access request, or policy change had to come from me or from a named manager through our normal system. No parent, sibling, friend, or impressive title could replace that. The note said, "Ava built the first chapter. I'm here to take the family company into the next one." At 8:20, Riverbend's regional manager called, and he was polite, which is often worse than angry. He had received Brielle's email and wanted to know whether our leadership was changing during contract renewal. I told him no. I called it a family misunderstanding. He paused. "Ava, the deck says she is a co-owner." I said the deck was unauthorized. Then this is more than a misunderstanding. He was right. I had tried to soften the truth because the people causing the problem were my family. That choice made me sound less honest to the person who needed certainty. I corrected myself. My sister falsely represented her authority. My parents helped her. We have disabled the access they used and notified the bank and vendors. I am the sole owner. The words were humiliating. They were also clean. He thanked me. Riverbend would continue the current contract, but they paused an expansion decision until we completed an outside access review. That was the practical damage my mother kept pretending did not exist. After the call, I went into the restroom and locked the door. I gripped the edge of the sink until my hands stopped shaking. Caleb had received the emails from Tidewell. He had also found a draft financing form. The bank had not accepted that statement. Their account manager had flagged it and asked for current ownership records. That request led to Thursday's meeting. My parents believed the bank was gathering everyone to approve their plan. In reality, the bank wanted to identify who could speak for the company. I called the account manager. I explained the situation and asked to keep the meeting. "You still want them there?" she asked. "Yes, I want one room, one record, and no second version afterward." She agreed, but set a condition. The meeting would address authority and the pending equipment request only. It would not mediate a family dispute. That is exactly what I want. I also asked Tidewell to send a representative. They agreed because their reservation contract was already in question. By noon, the meeting had a purpose my parents did not understand. I sent them a written notice. It said they had no authority to represent Mercer Laundry Systems, use its name, contact its clients, enter its property, or place orders. I sent Brielle the same notice, and Mom replied within 4 minutes. "This is cruel and unnecessary. We are still meeting Thursday." I did not answer. Brielle called twice. I let both calls go to voicemail. Her first message was angry. She said I was trying to destroy her launch, and the second came 20 minutes later. Her voice was smaller. "I need you to know I didn't make up the ownership thing. Mom said you agreed years ago that the business would stay equal between us." I played that message for Caleb. "Did you?" he asked. "No. Did you say anything that could sound like that?" I thought back, but I had never promised shares or equal ownership. That afternoon, Dad came to my office without an appointment. The new door code stopped him at reception, and he stood behind the glass while an employee called me. I met him in the lobby. "You locked your mother out," he said. "She entered my warehouse without permission. She used to work here. She stopped 10 years ago. She helped build this place. She helped with invoices for 9 months. Dad asked me to approve the equipment and settle ownership later. He said the reservation fee would be lost otherwise." "The agreement is in your name," I said. "We paid it for the family. You paid it before asking me, because you always say no first." I asked why this had become urgent. He looked through the glass toward the office. "Brielle needs a win." "That is not a business reason. It is a family reason. What happened?" Brielle's styling business had lost a large client in the spring. She had ordered fabric based on a verbal promise, and the client backed out. My parents had covered the storage bills and supplier balance. Brielle now owed them $24,000. The new division was supposed to solve everything. Brielle would gain a stable platform, and my parents would recover their money from future profits. I would absorb the risk because my company could handle it. "You decided my company was the cushion," I said. "We thought everyone could benefit. You thought Brielle could avoid a loss, you could recover your money, and I would carry the debt. You have the strongest back." That was the family belief in its purest form. The person who could carry more was expected to carry what others dropped. I asked whether Brielle knew the real reason. "She knows we helped with some bills. Does she know you expect the company to repay you?" Dad did not answer, and I told him Thursday's meeting would proceed. I also told him the company would not reimburse their reservation fee or Brielle's debt. Dad said Mom would never forgive me. That is her decision, I said. Dad left without saying goodbye. I returned to Caleb's office. He was organizing the current file into a simple order: formation record, ownership schedule, loan note, payment history, payoff acknowledgement, approved signer list, and access revocation. Each section answered one question. Caleb asked whether I wanted him to speak during the meeting. Only explain the records, I said. The decision is mine. That evening, I stayed late with Nora to review every client contact. We found no other active claims. We changed vendor instructions and added two-person approval for equipment orders. No, it got me started. I regret acting as if repayment would end a debt they never meant to release. Before we left, I walked through the warehouse. The lights clicked off in sections behind me. At the blank display wall Brielle had photographed, I found a strip of blue painter's tape. She had marked where her logo would go. I peeled it off. The next morning, Brielle came to my house. I saw her through the door camera and almost did not answer. Then I stepped onto the porch and closed the door behind me. "Did Mom tell you about the $24,000? I asked. She said they covered a short-term gap. They expect my company to repay them through your division. Brielle stared at the porch boards. She said profits would make everyone whole. Did she say you owed them? She said not to worry about it. She admitted Mom had written most of the ownership language, and Dad had paid for the business cards. Brielle had accepted it because she wanted the story to be true. Did you believe I had agreed? I asked. She rubbed her hands together. I believed you would. That is different. I know. I asked whether she would correct the emails before Thursday. She looked up. What happens to my launch? It stops under my company's name. Can we still do the pilot you mentioned? Not now. I explained why. A pilot required trust, and she had entered my warehouse, contacted my clients, and used a false title. I followed what Mom set up. You also knew I had not said yes. She nodded. I told her repair required 3 things: correct every person she had contacted, cancel the launch breakfast, and stop using my logo. That will make me look ridiculous. It will make the information accurate. She stood. You really don't care what happens to me. I care. I am refusing to make my employees pay for it. Before getting in, she turned back. Mom says family should not need permission. Family needs consent more, not less. Around noon, 6 copied recipients received a correction from Brielle. It said the ownership announcement was premature and that no transfer had been completed. I replied, there is no pending transfer. That was my failed attempt at a private correction. I had offered her a chance to tell the whole truth. She had chosen a softer lie. Thursday would have to do what Tuesday could not. The bank meeting began at 10 on Thursday morning. Harbor State used a glass conference room on the 2nd floor. The table was long enough for distance, but not escape. Caleb sat beside me with his laptop closed. Across from us were Mom, Dad, and Brielle. The bank officer sat at one end. Tidewell's representative sat at the other, and Mom had brought the family chart in a leather folder. Brielle had brought the sales deck, and Dad had brought the reservation agreement. The bank officer opened with one question. Who currently owns Mercer Laundry Systems? I do, I said. Mom answered at the same time. Our family does. The officer looked between us. That is why we are here. Mom began before anyone invited her. She described the $30,000 loan, her months of invoice work, and the risks she and Dad had taken. She called Brielle's division a natural extension, and she said my caution had delayed a fair transition. Then she placed the family chart in the middle of the table. This is how the business was always understood, she said. The Tidewell representative glanced at it. Is that part of the company record? No, I said. Mom turned toward me. It represents the agreement. What agreement? The family agreement. Who signed it? She did not answer. The bank officer asked Caleb to present the current records. Caleb opened his laptop. The file appeared on the wall screen. Its title looked almost dull against Mom's glossy chart. Ownership and authority, current. The first page showed the company formation. I was the sole owner. The second showed the current ownership schedule, and my name held every share. The third was the promissory note, and it described my parents as lenders. It stated that the loan created no ownership, voting right, or management authority. Caleb did not look at her as he moved to the payment history. Every transfer appeared by date and amount, all the way to the final payment. The next page listed approved bank signers. My name appeared first. 2 internal managers had limited authority for routine expenses. No one in my family appeared. Mom gave a tight laugh. Paper can say anything, the bank officer replied. These records say who can act for the company. Mom looked at me. Tell them why that paper exists. Tell them we trusted you when no one else would. I already did. Tell them you promised to take care of this family. I never promised to give away my company. Dad leaned forward. You would not have a company without us. I had heard that sentence in kitchens, parking lots, and holiday dinners. This time, it had witnesses and a price attached. Your loan helped me survive the first year, I said. It did not buy the next 11. We gave you everything. You gave me a loan, I paid it back with interest. We are your parents. Yes. And she is your sister. Yes. Then why are strangers getting the future while Betrayal gets nothing? I looked toward the glass wall where people moved through the bank lobby. None of them depended on my company. 28 people back at the warehouse did. My employees are not strangers, I said. They earned their place. Betrayal tried to claim one. Mom pressed on. She made one mistake because she believed her family. She entered my warehouse. She used my client list. She called herself an owner. She did all of that before asking me. I told her you agreed. Betrayal turned toward Mom. You said she agreed years ago. I said she understood the business would stay in the family. That is not what you told me. Mom ignored her. She looked only at me. This could still work. Approve the equipment. Give Betrayal the division. We can settle percentages later. No, Dad opened the reservation agreement. If you refuse, we lose $8,000. You signed it. For the family. Without the company. The Tidewell representative spoke. The reservation agreement was in Linda and Grant Mercer's names. The fee covered special preparation and was not refundable after the hold period. Mom stared at him. But the machines were for Mercer Laundry Systems. The company never approved the order, he said. That is what this meeting confirms. She turned back to me. You would let your parents lose that money? I did not spend it. You can reimburse us. No. The bank officer placed the unfinished financing form on the table. She asked whether I wanted the request withdrawn. Yes. She slid a confirmation page toward me, and Mom put her hand over it. Do not do this in anger. I looked at her hand, then at her face. I spent 11 years avoiding this in fear. I moved the page out from under her hand, and I signed the withdrawal. Then, I signed the authority notice that removed every legacy family contact from the bank profile. The officer confirmed the change in the account record while I watched. The Tidewell representative closed the equipment request. He confirmed that no debt, order, or ownership change would be attached to my company. Caleb emailed the verified signer list to our active vendors from the conference room. 3 actions, one after another. The plan lost its bank, its equipment, and its borrowed name. Mom sat back. You planned to humiliate us. I planned to stop you. In front of a bank, you brought the bank into it. Dad looked at Betrayal. Say something. Betrayal had been staring at the ownership file on the wall, and she asked Caleb to return to the promissory note. She read the sentence stating that the loan created no equity. Did you both sign this? She asked. Dad said yes. Mom said, that was legal language. Betrayal looked at her. You told me you owned half. We own the moral half. That phrase was the clearest thing Mom said all morning. She believed effort, parenthood, and early help gave her a moral share that could expand whenever she needed it. "There is no moral half of someone else's consent," I said. Mom's eyes filled, but her voice stayed sharp. "You are choosing a company over us." "No, I am choosing what is mine over what you invented." She pointed at Betrayal, "And what happens to her? Her business is hers to rebuild. After you ruined her launch, she used a false title for the launch." Betrayal spoke before Mom could answer. "She's right." Mom turned so fast her chair moved. Betrayal looked at me, not at her. I knew Ava had not said yes. I thought she would once it was too public to refuse. Mom whispered, "We were helping you." Betrayal shook her head. "You were helping me avoid hearing no." The bank officer reminded us that the meeting had reached its purpose. Ownership was confirmed, the financing request was withdrawn. No further action was needed from the bank. I placed the unauthorized business card beside the family chart. "This title ends today," I said to Betrayal. "Every client and vendor gets a full correction, not premature, not pending, false. You will not contact my employees or use my company's name. You will not enter the property. You will reimburse the direct review costs caused by the false order. Until that happens, there are no family business conversations." Mom stood. "You cannot invoice your parents. I can invoice the people who created a business expense. After all we did for you." I looked at the payoff page still glowing on the wall. "You helped me once. I honored it. You do not get to collect my life forever." Dad picked up the reservation agreement and his shoulders had dropped. "Linda," he said, "let's go." She looked at the file, the bank officer, and the Tidewell representative. She had expected the room to pressure me toward family peace. Instead, every neutral person had asked the same simple question: who had authority? She took the family chart and tore it once down the middle. Then she walked out. Through the glass, I watched Mom cross the lobby without looking back. Dad paused at the elevator, but he did not return. Betrayal folded the unauthorized business card until my name disappeared inside it. "I'll send the corrections today," she said. "Send Caleb the recipient list first." She nodded. "Does this mean we're done?" "It means trust has to start from the truth." For the first time all week, the company belonged to me in every room where it had been questioned. Betrayal sent the full correction that afternoon. It named me as the sole owner and admitted that her earlier title was unauthorized. Riverbend received it before I called, and their regional manager thanked me for resolving the issue. The expansion stayed paused until the access review ended, but our existing contract remained secure. The review took 3 weeks. It found the forgotten vendor profile, the old emergency code, and no missing money. We fixed every gap. I paid for the review because it was my responsibility to secure the company. My parents received a separate invoice for the direct review costs their false order caused. They did not pay it, and they also lost the $8,000 reservation fee. Tidewell had followed the agreement they signed. No speech from me caused that loss. Their signature did. Mom sent one message: "I hope the company keeps you warm when you have no family left." I read it at my kitchen counter. Then I archived it. Dad called twice, but left no voicemail. I did not return the calls, and Betrayal closed her launch pages and stopped using my logo. A month later, she mailed a check covering the design charges tied to her sales deck. We did not become close again. Repair is slower than regret, and regret is not the same as change. At work, the noise settled, and Tidewell restored our normal purchasing account. After the outside review was complete, Riverbend approved the 2-property expansion. 6 months later, I started a profit-sharing plan for employees who had been with us at least 2 years. It was not a reaction to my parents. I had planned it before the crisis. Caleb saved the final authority file in our audit system, and he changed one word in the title. "Ownership and authority verified." "Because current can be challenged," he said. "Verified has receipts." I still think about the loan. My parents did help me. Gratitude does not require amnesia, and a boundary does not erase what was good. My mother believed she had given Brielle half of my business. What she really gave her was permission to ignore my answer. That permission ended in a glass conference room with one plain file on the wall. I kept the company. My employees kept their work. My parents kept the contract they chose to sign. Brielle kept the responsibility for rebuilding her own name. That was not revenge. It was the first fair division my family had made in years. What would you have done at that bank table? Share your answer, and remember this: love can be generous without surrendering consent.